Olivia Taylor's perfect life shattered when her husband's young secretary showed up at her doorstep with life-changing news. "I'm carrying your husband's baby," the woman announced, setting in motion a series of events that would transform Olivia from a trusting wife into a formidable force of justice. This is the story of betrayal, calculated revenge, and one woman's remarkable journey to reclaim her power. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. On a crisp September morning in Seattle, Olivia Taylor stood at the granite island of her modern kitchen, reviewing case files for an upcoming court appearance. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the waterfront home she shared with her husband, Andrew, a founding partner at one of the city's most prestigious architectural firms. At 42, Olivia had built a formidable reputation. As a corporate attorney, known for her sharp mind and unflappable demeanor in high-stakes negotiations. Her schedule was meticulously organized, which was why the unexpected doorbell at 7:15 a.m. caught her off guard. Andrew had already left for an early client meeting. At least that's what he'd told her. When Olivia opened the door, she found Megan Reynolds standing on her porch. The young woman's presence was jarring. Andrew's administrative assistant had never visited their home before. More unsettling was Megan's appearance. Despite the early hour, she was immaculately dressed in a designer blazer that seemed extravagant for someone on an assistant's salary. "Mrs. Taylor," Megan said, her voice carrying a strange mix of nervousness and confidence. "I need to speak with you. It's important." Olivia hesitated, the attorney in her immediately sensing something significant was about to unfold. She gestured for Megan to enter, leading her through the open-concept living area to the kitchen where her coffee was still warm. "Andrew isn't here," Olivia said, studying the younger woman's face. "I know," Megan replied. "That's why I came now. I wanted to speak with you directly." There was a brief silence as Olivia offered Megan coffee, which she declined. Stepping behind the kitchen island, instinctively creating a barrier between them, Olivia maintained her professional composure, while her mind raced through possibilities. Has Andrew been laid off? Was the firm in trouble? The scenarios flickered through her thoughts until Megan's next words obliterated them all. "I'm pregnant," Megan announced, her blue eyes fixed directly on Olivia's. "Andrew is the father." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia's hand tightened around her coffee mug, but her face remained a carefully composed mask. 15 years of negotiating corporate mergers had taught her that showing emotion often surrendered power. Even as her world tilted on its axis, this training held. "I see," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the sudden hollowness in her chest. "How far along are you?" 10 weeks, Megan replied, reaching into her designer handbag, a Prada that Olivia recognized from the previous season's collection, and withdrawing a small envelope. She slid it across the granite countertop. "I had my first ultrasound yesterday." Olivia glanced at the envelope but didn't touch it. Instead, she focused on Megan, noting the young woman's rigid posture and the slight tremor in her fingers despite her apparent confidence. There was something calculated about this visit, something that felt rehearsed. "Does Andrew know you're here?" Olivia asked, strategically revealing nothing of her own thoughts. "No," Megan said, a flash of something, was it triumph? Crossing her features. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." Olivia nodded, taking a deliberate sip of her coffee. "And why is that, Megan?" The question seemed to catch the younger woman off guard. She had clearly expected tears, accusations, perhaps even denial, not this measured response. I thought you deserved to know," Megan stammered, her practiced confidence wavering. "That's considerate," Olivia replied, her tone neutral. "Though I suspect there's more to your visit than concern for my feelings." Megan shifted uncomfortably on the bar stool. "Andrew and I have a connection. It's not just physical. He tells me things about the firm, about your marriage. There it was, the real purpose of this morning ambush. Not just to announce the affair or the pregnancy, but to stake a claim, to assert some imagined upper hand. Olivia recognized the tactic from countless negotiations: reveal a devastating piece of information, then immediately press the advantage, while the other party is still reeling. "Would you like some water?" Olivia asked, deliberately changing the subject. "Coffee probably isn't advisable in your condition." Megan blinked, thrown by the shift. "No, thank you." Olivia moved to the refrigerator, taking out a bottle of water anyway and placing it before the younger woman. This simple act, caring for someone who had just delivered a devastating blow, reasserted a subtle control over the interaction. "Does anyone at the firm know?" Olivia asked, her mind already working several steps ahead. "Not yet," Megan replied, twisting the cap off the water bottle. "But people will find out eventually. I'm starting to show." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "And what are your expectations, Megan? What do you hope will happen now?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Megan took a sip of water, her confidence visibly returning. "Andrew and I have discussed options for the future," she said, the statement deliberately vague yet threatening. "He feels trapped in a marriage that's become more of a business arrangement." Those are his words, not mine. The barb was designed to wound, and despite her composure, Olivia felt its sting. 15 years of marriage reduced to a business arrangement. In conversations with a woman half her age, yet she didn't flinch. "I see," Olivia said, her mind already cataloging the key phrases, potential evidence of Andrew's state of mind should legal proceedings become necessary. "And these discussions included plans for your child?" Megan nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Andrew's excited about becoming a father. He says it's a second chance, something he missed out on with you." Another calculated blow. Olivia and Andrew's inability to have children had been a private grief, one that had tested their marriage years ago. The fact that Andrew had shared this intimate detail with his assistant ignited a cold fury in Olivia, but she channeled it into analytical precision rather than emotional outburst. "That's interesting," Olivia said, her tone revealing nothing, "especially considering the terms of the Taylor family trust." Megan's expression shifted subtly. "What trust?" "Andrew didn't mention it?" Olivia asked, picking up her phone and checking the time as if this conversation was merely one appointment in her busy morning. "Andrew's grandmother, Eleanor Taylor, established a substantial trust fund for all family members. Andrew's portion is quite significant, approximately $18 million. Megan's eyes widened slightly, and Olivia knew she had found a critical piece of information the younger woman didn't possess. "The trust has several stipulations," Olivia continued. "One relates specifically to marital fidelity. Eleanor was quite traditional in her values. This wasn't entirely true. While there was indeed a Taylor family trust, Olivia wasn't certain if it contained an infidelity clause. But as the attorney who had helped Andrew's family update the trust documents years ago, she knew enough to create a plausible bluff. The momentary flash of concern on Megan's face confirmed it had landed. "I'm not here about money," Megan said quickly, though her tone lacked conviction. "Of course not," Olivia agreed pleasantly. "You're here because you thought I deserved to know, which I appreciate." Megan's confidence was clearly shaken now. She had arrived expecting to control the narrative, to leave Olivia devastated while she walked away with the upper hand. Instead, she found herself facing a woman who seemed unnervingly unruffled by news that should have destroyed her. "I should go," Megan said, reaching for her bag. "I have a doctor's appointment at 9. Olivia nodded, walking her to the door with the same polite efficiency she would show any unwelcome visitor. "Take care of yourself, Megan. Pregnancy can be stressful, especially in complicated situations." At the threshold, Megan turned, making one final attempt to regain control. "He doesn't love you anymore, you know. He's planning to leave." Olivia smiled slightly. Perhaps. But it's always wise to understand the full consequences of decisions before making them, don't you think? Please close the door when you leave. I have calls to make. With that, Olivia turned and walked back to the kitchen, leaving Megan standing in the doorway. She didn't look back, but she heard the soft click of the door as the younger woman departed. Once alone, Olivia stood motionless at the kitchen island, allowing herself exactly 60 seconds to feel the full impact of what had just occurred. The betrayal cut deep, not just the affair or the pregnancy, but the casual sharing of their private struggles, the dismissal of their 15 years together as a mere business arrangement. When the minute passed, she reached for her phone and called her assistant, Jessica. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I need to clear my schedule for today, she said, her voice calm and decisive. And I need you to pull all the documents related to the Taylor Family Trust, the complete version, not just the summary we prepared last year. Everything okay? Jessica asked, concern evident in her voice. Not particularly, Olivia replied honestly, but it will be. Also, book me an appointment with Martin Davies. Your financial advisor? Is there a problem with the investments? No. Problem? Just some adjustments I'd like to make. As soon as possible, please. After ending the call, Olivia finally picked up the ultrasound envelope that Megan had left. Opening it, she studied the grainy black and white image, the first photographic evidence of her husband's betrayal. A small life, innocent in its creation, but now entangled in a web of adult complications. Placing the image on the counter, Olivia opened her laptop and created a new folder titled Taylor Resolution. Inside, she started a document and began typing methodically, recording every detail of Megan's visit while it was fresh in her memory. The exact words spoken, the times, the young woman's demeanor and reactions. She noted Megan's expensive clothing, the designer bag, details that might seem insignificant but could prove important later. As she typed, Olivia's thoughts sharpened into clear determination. Andrew had made his choice, risking not just their marriage but potentially his financial future and professional reputation. Now she would make her choices, carefully and strategically. The Andrew she thought she knew, the brilliant, ethical architect she had built a life with, was apparently a fiction. The real Andrew had been capable of carrying on an affair with a woman barely out of college, getting her pregnant, and discussing their marriage in disparaging terms. This revelation didn't just change her future, it rewrote her past, casting their 15 years together in a harsh new light. Olivia closed her laptop and moved to the window, looking out at Elliott Bay. The Seattle skyline reflected on the water's surface, distorted but recognizable, much like her life now appeared to her. Everything was the same, yet fundamentally altered. Her phone chimed with a text from Andrew. Meeting's running long, don't wait until tonight. The familiar excuse now took on new meaning. How many meetings had actually been time spent with Megan? How many late nights at the office had been lies? Olivia didn't respond to the text. Instead, she called her most trusted colleague at the firm, Robert Mitchell. Robert, I need a favor, she said when he answered. I need information on architectural firm partnerships in Washington state. Specifically, what happens when one partner engages in conduct that could damage the firm's reputation? That's specific, Robert replied cautiously. Anything I should know? Not yet, Olivia said. But soon, I'd appreciate your discretion on this. Always, he assured her. I'll have something for you by the end of day. Ending the call, Olivia made herself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen island, her mind moving from shock to strategic planning. She would not be a passive victim in this scenario. She would not be the pitied wife, the collateral damage in Andrew's midlife crisis. No, Olivia decided as she opened her laptop again. She would approach this betrayal as she would any high-stakes case, with methodical precision, emotional discipline, and an unwavering focus on the endgame. Andrew and Megan had made their opening move, thinking her unprepared. They had no idea what was coming next. Olivia's meticulous preparation that morning was interrupted by a call from Jessica. "I've cleared your schedule as requested. The Taylor family trust documents will be ready in an hour. And Martin Davies can see you at 2. "Perfect," Olivia replied. "And Jessica? If Andrew calls the office looking for me, tell him I'm in depositions, all day." This would be her first deliberate deception in their marriage, a small one, but symbolic of the shift that had occurred. As she ended the call, Olivia caught her reflection in the kitchen window. She looked exactly the same as she had yesterday before she knew her life was built on lies. How could such profound internal upheaval leave no visible trace? Olivia moved through the waterfront home, seeing it through new eyes. The clean architectural lines that had once represented their shared aesthetic now felt like a stage set. A beautiful illusion. She paused at the collection of framed photographs in the hallway, studying them as if they belonged to strangers. There they were on their wedding day 15 years ago, both beaming with promise. Andrew had been 30 then, already showing signs of the distinguished good looks that had only improved with age. His dark hair had since acquired streaks of silver at the temples, lending him the distinguished appearance that architectural clients found reassuring. At 27, Olivia had been a rising star at her law firm, determined to make partner before 30, a goal she'd achieved with 11 months to spare. They had met at a charity fundraiser where Andrew's firm had donated design services for a community center. Olivia had been representing her law firm, tasked with securing corporate donations. She'd approached him with a well-rehearsed pitch about tax benefits and community goodwill, but halfway through her spiel, he'd interrupted her. "Would you like to discuss this over dinner instead?" he'd asked. "Somewhere quieter, where I can actually hear your arguments?" That dinner had stretched to 4 hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly from professional ambitions to childhood dreams, favorite books, and travel aspirations. By the time they parted, Olivia knew she'd met someone special, a man whose intellect matched her own, whose ambition complemented rather than competed with hers. Their courtship had been swift but thoughtful. Within 6 months, Andrew had proposed on a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands, presenting her with an elegant emerald-cut diamond that he'd selected because it has clean lines and perfect proportion, like everything you appreciate. The wedding followed 4 months later, not an impulsive rush, but the efficient timeline of two people who recognized what they wanted and saw no reason to delay. The early years had been a harmonious blend of career advancement and relationship building. They purchased and renovated their first home together, a mid-century modern that Andrew lovingly restored while Olivia tackled her first major cases. Weekends were spent hiking in the Cascades or sailing on Puget Sound, building a shared life of experiences away from their demanding professions. The decision to try for children came 5 years into their marriage, once both had established themselves professionally. They approached parenthood with the same organized determination they applied to everything else, optimistic that this next chapter would unfold according to plan. But life had other ideas. After a year of trying naturally, came the fertility specialists, the scheduled intimacy, the hormone treatments that left Olivia physically depleted and emotionally raw. Through it all, Andrew had seemed supportive, holding her hand during appointments and assuring her that whatever happened, they would face it together. After the third failed IVF attempt, they had sat on their deck overlooking the water, discussing next steps. Adoption? Surrogacy? Or accepting a life without children? "Maybe this is trying to tell us something," Andrew had said, his voice gentle as he took her hand. "We have amazing careers, a wonderful marriage. Maybe that's our legacy." Olivia nodded, squeezing his hand in silent agreement. They decided to take a break from the fertility treatments, to recalibrate and enjoy each other again without the cloud of disappointment hanging over them. Over time, they had settled into a comfortable acceptance that their family would remain just the two of them, channeling their energies into their careers and philanthropic endeavors instead, or so she had believed. Now, looking at their wedding photo, Olivia wondered when exactly the distance had begun to grow between them. Had it been during the fertility struggles? Had Andrew secretly blamed her for their childlessness? Or had it been more recent? Perhaps when Megan joined his firm 2 years ago. Olivia moved to Andrew's home office, a space she rarely entered out of respect for his privacy. Now, that respect seemed foolishly naive. She sat at his immaculately organized desk, opening drawers and examining their contents. In the bottom drawer, she found financial records, predictable for Andrew, who had always been methodical about their investments. What wasn't predictable was the real estate brochure. For a lakeside property on Lake Washington, one she'd never seen before. Attached was a handwritten note in unfamiliar feminine handwriting. This one has everything we talked about. Private dock, guest house for a studio, room for a nursery with a view. Dream big, M. Olivia stared at the note, its implications unmistakable. This wasn't just an affair or an unplanned pregnancy. This was calculated planning for a future that excluded her. She photographed the brochure and note with her phone, then replaced everything exactly as she had found it. Moving to Andrew's closet, she conducted a careful inventory. His passport was in its usual place, but she noticed several gaps in his collection of suits. Specifically, the casual weekend attire he claimed to keep at the office for site visits. How many of those site visits had actually been weekends with Megan? Olivia then turned her attention to their finances, accessing their joint accounts from her laptop. Nothing seemed immediately unusual. The same regular deposits and expected withdrawals. Andrew had always been transparent about money, insisting they maintain both joint accounts and separate personal accounts for independence. That separation now seemed prescient in a troubling way. How much was Andrew keeping in his personal accounts? And what had he been spending on Megan? The designer clothing, the expensive handbag, gifts from her husband most likely. As she closed the laptop, Olivia's phone chimed with a text from Jessica. "Trust documents ready when you are. Also, Mr. Davies confirmed for 2 p.m., Olivia gathered. Her things and headed for the door, pausing to look back at the home she and Andrew had created together. Until today, she had thought of it as their sanctuary. Now it felt like evidence of an elaborate deception. She locked the door behind her with a resolute click. The drive to her law firm took her along Seattle's waterfront, a route that usually calmed her with its expansive views of Puget Sound. Today, she barely noticed the scenery, her mind consumed with constructing a timeline of Andrew's betrayal. When did it start? Megan had been at the firm for 2 years, hired fresh out of college, at 21. Had Andrew waited any time at all, or had he pursued her immediately? The pregnancy timing suggested the physical affair had been going on for at least several months, but the emotional betrayal, the sharing of personal information, the disparagement of their marriage, the real estate hunting, that suggested something more established. Arriving at the prestigious downtown offices of Preston, Mitchell and Taylor, Olivia nodded to the security guard and took the express elevator to the 38th floor. She had made partner 8 years ago, and her name on the letterhead still filled her with pride. The firm specialized in corporate law, particularly complex mergers and acquisitions, work that required strategic thinking and absolute discretion, qualities Olivia had in abundance. Jessica was waiting at her office door, concern evident on her face despite her professional demeanor. At 34, Jessica had been Olivia's assistant for 6 years, evolving from an efficient employee to something closer to a trusted ally. "The trust documents are on your desk," Jessica said, following Olivia into the spacious corner office. with its sweeping views of the city and sound. "And I brought coffee. You look like you need it." "Thank you," Olivia replied, setting her bag down and taking the offered cup. "I need a favor, Jessica, one that requires absolute confidentiality." Jessica closed the office door without being asked. "Of course. I need you to gather any information you can find on Megan Reynolds. She's an administrative assistant at Taylor & Hammond Architects." Jessica raised an eyebrow but didn't ask the obvious question. "What kind of information?" "Everything," Olivia said simply. "Educational background, employment history, social media presence, financial records if possible." "Are we vetting her for something?" Jessica asked carefully. Olivia met her assistant's gaze directly. "We're discovering who she really is, and I needed it yesterday." Jessica nodded, understanding the urgency without requiring further explanation. "I'll get started right away." Once alone, Olivia turned to the thick folder of trust documents. The Taylor Family Trust had been established by Andrew's grandmother, Eleanor Taylor, a formidable woman who had built a successful interior design business in the 1960s when female entrepreneurs were rare. Eleanor had married into the Taylor family, but it was her business acumen that had substantially increased the family fortune. Olivia flipped through the documents, scanning for relevant clauses. Eleanor had been explicit about her expectations for trust beneficiaries, including stipulations about education, philanthropy, and yes, moral conduct. There it was on page 37. A clearly articulated infidelity clause. Any beneficiary who engages in proven infidelity during marriage shall forfeit 50% of their trust allocation, with said portion to be redirected to their spouse, providing the spouse is not also guilty of infidelity. Olivia read the clause twice, a grim satisfaction settling over her. Her earlier bluff to Megan had been surprisingly accurate. The young woman had unknowingly walked into a situation far more complicated than a simple affair. By getting pregnant with Andrew's child, she had potentially cost him millions. But the clause required proof, indisputable evidence of the affair that would satisfy the trust administrators. Megan's word, and even the pregnancy itself, might not be enough if Andrew contested paternity or claimed the relationship began after a separation. Olivia needed more, and she needed to secure it before Andrew realized she was building a case. She made detailed notes on the trust provisions, particularly the evidentiary requirements and notification protocols. According to the terms, any beneficiary facing forfeiture was entitled to a hearing before the trustees. Currently, Andrew's father, William Taylor, and the family's longtime attorney, Gregory Simmons. She knew both men well. William had always treated her with cordial respect, though she sensed he found her ambition somewhat unseemly for a daughter-in-law. Gregory was more of an ally, having recognized Olivia's legal acumen early in her relationship with Andrew. How would they react to evidence of Andrew's infidelity? Would family loyalty outweigh the explicit terms of Eleanor's trust? Olivia couldn't be certain, which meant she needed her case to be airtight. Her next meeting was with Martin Davies, her personal financial advisor. Martin had been managing Olivia's investments since before her marriage, and she trusted his discretion implicitly. His office was in a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, the historic heart of Seattle. The space reflected Martin's personality, traditional foundation with modern sensibilities, evidenced by the exposed brick walls adorned with contemporary art. "Olivia," he greeted her warmly, rising from behind his antique desk. "Always a pleasure. Though your assistant suggested this isn't a routine visit." "It's not," Olivia confirmed, taking a seat. "I need to understand my complete financial position, independent of Andrew, and I need to make some changes to my accounts and investments." Martin's expression turned serious. "May I ask why?" "My marriage is likely ending," Olivia said, the first time she had spoken the words aloud. "I need to protect myself." To his credit, Martin didn't press for details. Instead, he turned to his computer and pulled up her financial portfolio. "Let's Start with what you own independently. For the next hour, they methodically reviewed her assets, her partnership stake in the law firm, her personal investment portfolio, retirement accounts, and the inheritance from her parents that she had, kept separate from the joint finances. The total was substantial, a testament to her successful career and prudent investment strategy. "You're in a strong position," Martin observed. "Your personal assets are well diversified and largely independent of Andrew's finances." "What about the joint accounts and property?" Olivia asked. "The house is jointly owned, as are several investment accounts and the vacation property in the San Juans," Martin explained. "Washington is a community property state, so anything acquired during the marriage is generally considered equally owned, regardless of whose name is on it." Olivia nodded. "I want to move my personal funds to new accounts at different institutions, and I want to establish a separate secure email for financial communications going forward." "This sounds like more than just divorce planning," Martin noted carefully. "It's preparation," Olivia replied. "I've built my career on anticipating every possible scenario. This is no different." Martin studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll make the arrangements immediately. The new accounts will be ready by tomorrow. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes," Olivia said. "Information on Andrew's recent financial activities, unusual withdrawals, new accounts, significant purchases." "That's trickier," Martin admitted. "I have visibility into the joint accounts, but not his personal finances, unless he's shared that information with me." "Focus on what you can access legally," Olivia instructed. "I'm particularly interested in any transactions that might indicate irregular spending patterns in the past 2 years." As she left Martin's office, Olivia's phone chimed with a text from Jessica. "Preliminary info on MR gathered. Also, R. Mitchell left documents regarding architectural partnerships on your desk. Excellent. The pieces were coming together. Olivia." Checked the time. Nearly 5 o'clock. Andrew had texted earlier that he'd be working late, a claim she now viewed with bitter skepticism. Rather than returning to the office, she decided to go home and continue her investigation there. The house was still empty when she arrived, the silence no longer peaceful but charged with unspoken betrayals. Olivia moved through the rooms methodically, this time conducting a more thorough examination of their shared space. In the guest bathroom, rarely used except by visitors, she found a small makeup bag tucked behind extra towels. Inside were items that definitely didn't belong to her. A shade of lipstick she would never wear, a perfume she didn't recognize. More evidence that Megan had been in their home before, perhaps multiple times. Olivia photographed everything, then replaced it exactly as she had found it. She continued her search, looking for any other signs of the other woman's presence in their home. In Andrew's bedside drawer, she discovered a hotel keycard sleeve from the Olympic Hotel downtown, dated just 3 weeks earlier. Had he brought Megan here while Olivia was at a conference in Chicago? The sound of the garage door opening startled her. Andrew was home earlier than expected. Quickly, Olivia replaced the keycard and closed the drawer, moving to her own side of the bed and picking up the novel she'd been reading. She heard Andrew enter the kitchen, setting down his keys with the familiar clink that had once signaled comfort and connection. Now it felt like the opening move in a chess game where she needed to stay several steps ahead. "Olivia?" he called, surprise evident in his voice. "You're home early." Olivia took a deep breath, schooling her features into casual neutrality. It was time to face her husband, the man she now realized she had never truly known. "In the bedroom," Olivia called out, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. She heard Andrew's footsteps moving through the house, the familiar cadence now loaded with new significance. When he appeared in the doorway, she studied him with fresh eyes, the handsome face she had woken up beside for 15 years, the confident posture of a successful man, the slight furrow between his brows that always appeared when something disrupted his carefully ordered world. "You feeling okay?" he asked, loosening his tie as he crossed to her side of the bed. Jessica mentioned you canceled your appointments today. So he had called her office, just as she'd anticipated. Olivia noted his concerned expression, wondering how many times he had performed this role, the attentive husband, while harboring such profound betrayal. I had some things to take care of, she replied, setting aside her book. How was your day? Any interesting meetings? The double meaning hung between them, though only she was aware of it. Andrew shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over. The reading chair, the usual. Client presentations, budget discussions. He hesitated slightly. We're pitching for that downtown revitalization project next week, so everything's a bit hectic. Olivia nodded, watching as he moved into their walk-in, closet to change. She noticed him check his phone discreetly. Was he messaging Megan, warning her? The thought ignited a flash of fury that Olivia quickly contained. Emotional reactions wouldn't serve her now. I was thinking, she called to him, we should plan a weekend away soon. Maybe the San Juan house? It's been a while since. We've been there together. Andrew emerged from the closet in casual clothes, surprise evident on his face. That sounds nice, but with this project deadline… Of course, Olivia said smoothly. Just a thought. Speaking of projects, I ran into Diane Hammond at the coffee shop this morning. It was a deliberate lie, a test. Diane was Andrew's business partner and the other named principal of Taylor and Hammond Architects. Andrew's expression remained neutral, but Olivia caught the slight stiffening of his shoulders. Oh, how is she? Concerned, actually. She mentioned some irregularities with the firm's expense accounts. This was another fabrication, carefully crafted to gauge his reaction. Andrew's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's strange, he said, his tone deliberately casual. She hasn't mentioned anything to me. What kind of irregularities? Something about unauthorized hotel charges, Olivia replied, watching him intently. I suggested she speak with you directly. For a moment. Uncertainty flickered across Andrew's face. Was he trying to remember if he had indeed charged hotels to the company account for his rendezvous with Megan? Must be a misunderstanding, he finally said. We're very careful with client. Expenses, Olivia nodded, allowing the subject to drop. She had what she needed. Confirmation that her husband could lie to her face without hesitation. It shouldn't have surprised her, given what she now knew. But witnessing it firsthand was still jarring. I thought we could have dinner together. Tonight? She suggested. It's been a while since we've had a proper conversation. Andrew glanced at his phone again. Actually, I told Brad I'd meet him for drinks to go over the presentation materials. Rain check? Brad Stevens was Andrew's project manager, a convenient excuse Olivia suspected he had used before. She smiled thinly. Of course. Tell Brad I said, hello. As Andrew headed for the shower, Olivia took out her phone and sent a quick text to Jessica. Need info on Brad Stevens from T&H. Current whereabouts, if possible. The response came minutes later. B. Stevens left for Vancouver this morning. Conference presentation returns Friday. Another lie, then. Olivia felt a cold certainty settle over her. She had what she needed to proceed with the confrontation, but not here, not in their home where Andrew held the psychological advantage of familiarity. While Andrew showered, she quickly changed into a simple but elegant black dress, armor of a different sort. When he emerged from the bathroom, he paused, noticing her change of attire. Are you going out? He asked, a hint of wariness in his tone. Yes, she replied, applying a touch of lipstick to her vanity mirror. Since you have plans, I thought, I'd join Samantha for dinner at Canlis. Samantha Reed was her closest friend, a thoracic surgeon whose demanding schedule often meant their get-togethers were planned weeks in advance, which made the spontaneous dinner invitation implausible. But Olivia knew Andrew wouldn't check. He and Samantha had always maintained a polite but distant relationship. That's nice, Andrew said, clearly relieved that she wouldn't be home alone, presumably questioning his whereabouts. Give her my Best. Olivia nodded, gathering her purse and car keys. Don't wait up. These dinners with Sam tend to run late. She left him standing in their bedroom, the tension between them disguised as the ordinary departure of a long-married couple with separate evening plans. But as Olivia drove away from their waterfront home, she wasn't headed to Canlis Restaurant. Instead, she directed her car downtown toward the Olympic Hotel. If Andrew's pattern held true to the evidence she had gathered so far, that's where he would meet Megan tonight. The key card she had found was recent, and the Olympic was conveniently located between their home and his office, the perfect venue for a clandestine meeting. Olivia parked in the hotel's underground garage and made her way to the elegant lobby. The Olympic was one of Seattle's most historic and luxurious hotels, its classic architecture and impeccable service making it a favorite among visiting dignitaries and local power players. She and Andrew had stayed there for their 5th anniversary, a memory now tainted by the possibility that he had brought his mistress to the same establishment. Taking a seat in the plush lobby with its soaring ceilings and marble columns, Olivia positioned herself with a clear view of both the main entrance and the elevators. She ordered sparkling water from a passing server and settled in to wait, her outward composure betraying nothing of the turmoil within. At precisely 7:45 p.m., Andrew walked through the revolving doors, checking his watch with the impatience of someone with a scheduled appointment. He headed straight for the hotel bar, not noticing Olivia in her discreet corner of the lobby. She gave him 5 minutes before following, selecting a seat at the far end of the bar where she could observe, without being immediately visible. Andrew was nursing a scotch, his attention focused on the entrance. He looked nervous, Olivia realized, not the confident architect everyone knew, but a man engaged in deception, constantly vigilant against discovery. At 8:00 p.m., Megan arrived. She wore a form-fitting blue dress that highlighted her youth and the slight curve of her stomach, not yet obviously pregnant, but visible to someone looking for the signs. Andrew's face transformed when he saw her, lighting up with an intimacy Olivia hadn't witnessed in years. He stood to greet her, his hand lingering at the small of her back as he guided her to a secluded booth. Olivia felt sick watching them together. The easy familiarity, the private smiles, the way Megan casually reached across the table to straighten Andrew's tie. This wasn't just an affair. This was a relationship with established patterns and shared secrets. She considered her options. She could confront them here, creating a scene in the public space they had chosen for their rendezvous. The humiliation might be satisfying in the moment, but it would be fleeting and might ultimately undermine her longer-term strategy. Instead, Olivia signaled the bartender and ordered a glass of Cabernet, her first alcohol of the day. If she was going to witness this, she deserved at least this small comfort. For 45 minutes, she watched their interaction, noting every touch, every laugh, every conspiratorial lean across the table. They were discussing something serious now. Megan's expression troubled as Andrew spoke earnestly, holding her hands in his. Was he telling her about the trust? Warning her about Olivia's suspicions? Finally, they stood, Andrew leaving cash on the table for their drinks. Olivia tensed as they headed toward the elevators. Were they going to a room? But at the last moment, they turned toward the main exit instead. Andrew's hand protectively at Megan's elbow as they departed. Olivia waited 30 seconds, then followed, at a discreet distance. Outside, she watched as Andrew hailed a taxi, holding the door for Megan before joining her inside. Quickly, Olivia returned to her car in the parking garage and followed the taxi as it wound through downtown Seattle. The cab eventually stopped at an upscale apartment building in Capitol Hill, a trendy neighborhood popular with young professionals. Olivia parked across the street, watching as Andrew and Megan entered the building together, his arm now wrapped possessively around her waist. It took Olivia only a moment to decide her next move. She crossed the street and examined the building directory in the lobby. There it was. M. Reynolds, apartment 703. Taking out her phone, she photographed the directory as further evidence, then returned to her car. Instead of heading home, Olivia drove to her law office, the familiar environment providing comfort as she processed what she had witnessed. The firm was quiet at this hour, just a few associates working late on pressing cases. She nodded to the security guard and made her way to her office, where she found a stack of files on her desk. Jessica's preliminary research on Megan Reynolds. Settling behind her desk, Olivia began to read. Megan had graduated from the University of Washington 2 years ago with a degree in business administration. Her father, Ronald Reynolds, was a mid-level executive at a local tech company, comfortable but not wealthy. There was nothing in her background to suggest the designer clothes and expensive accessories she now sported. More interestingly, Megan had been hired at Taylor & Hammond directly from college, bypassing the firm's usual rigorous recruitment process. According to internal emails Jessica had somehow obtained, Diane Hammond had initially questioned Megan's qualifications, but Andrew had insisted on hiring her, citing her exceptional potential. Financial records showed Megan's salary was standard for her position, though she had received an unusually large raise after just 6 months. Her social media presence was limited but revealing. Check-ins at high-end restaurants, weekend trips to Portland and Vancouver, a lifestyle that seemed beyond her means unless supplemented by someone else. Most tellingly, Jessica had uncovered a lease agreement for Megan's Capitol Hill apartment, co-signed by a James Turner, a name Olivia didn't recognize. The rent was $3,200 per month, far more than Megan could reasonably afford on her administrative assistant's salary. Olivia made detailed notes, constructing a timeline of Andrew and Megan's relationship based on the evidence gathered so far. The affair likely began shortly after Megan was hired, with financial support from Andrew beginning around the same time. The pregnancy was recent, 10 weeks, according to Megan herself. By midnight, Olivia had compiled a dossier that painted a damning picture. Andrew had used his position to hire a young woman he was attracted to, began an affair with her almost immediately, and was now financially supporting her while they planned a future together, all behind Olivia's back. The betrayal was comprehensive, extending beyond their marriage into his professional ethics and financial responsibilities. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a midlife crisis. It was a calculated deception spanning years. Exhausted but resolved, Olivia gathered her materials and headed home. The house was dark when she arrived, but Andrew's car was in the garage. She moved quietly through the silent rooms, noting that he had chosen to sleep in the guest bedroom. Another telling detail. Was he avoiding her out of guilt, or was he simply no longer interested in maintaining even the pretense of their marriage? In their bedroom, Olivia locked the door and changed into pajamas, her mind racing despite her physical fatigue. Tomorrow would require careful navigation. She needed to confront Andrew with what she knew, but strategically, revealing enough, to shake him while withholding the extent of her investigation and future plans. She also needed to speak with Diane Hammond. If Andrew had compromised professional ethics by hiring and promoting his mistress, his business partner deserved to know. Additionally, Diane might become an important ally in the aftermath. Sleep eluded Olivia as she stared at the ceiling, replaying the evening's revelations. The image of Andrew and Megan together, the tenderness, the intimacy, the easy familiarity, cut deeper than she had anticipated. Despite her legal training and emotional discipline, she was still human, still capable of being wounded by betrayal. By dawn, Olivia had formulated her approach. She showered and dressed with particular care, selecting a crisp white blouse and tailored charcoal suit that projected both authority and control. If today was to be a battlefield, she would enter it properly armored. In the kitchen she found Andrew already dressed for work, coffee mug in hand as he scrolled through emails on his phone. He looked up when she entered, his expression guarded. "Good morning," he said cautiously. How was dinner with Samantha? I didn't have dinner with Samantha, Olivia replied, her tone level as she poured herself coffee. I was at the Olympic Hotel last night. So were you. Andrew froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. For a moment, he seemed about to deny it, but the certainty in Olivia's eyes stopped him. You followed me? He asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. I observed my husband meeting his pregnant mistress, Olivia corrected him. There's a distinction. Andrew set down his mug, his knuckles white. Olivia, I can explain. Can you? She interrupted. Can you explain hiring a 21-year-old straight out of college because you found her attractive? Can you explain the apartment you're paying for in Capitol Hill under a false name? Can you explain discussing our marriage with her and planning a future together while lying to my face every day? His jaw tightened, and Olivia recognized the shift in his demeanor, from defensive husband to calculating strategist. This was the Andrew she knew from difficult business negotiations, the man who could pivot quickly when cornered. I was going to tell you, he said, his tone softening. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. When exactly were you planning? To tell me? Olivia asked. Before or after the baby was born? Before or after you moved Megan into a lakefront property with a nursery and private dock? Andrew's eyes widened slightly. She had surprised him with the specific details. Good. She needed him off balance. You've been in my office, he said, accusingly. I've been examining my life, Olivia countered. The one you've been systematically dismantling while I trusted you. For a moment, they stared at each other across the kitchen island, the same spot where Megan had delivered her news. Just yesterday. How much had changed in 24 hours? What do you want, Olivia? Andrew finally asked, his voice weary. Money? The house? The question infuriated her. Its presumption, its reduction of 15 years to mere assets to be divided. What I want, she said carefully, is for you to understand exactly what your actions have set in motion. You've violated not just our marriage, but the terms of your grandmother's trust. You've potentially compromised your firm by hiring and promoting someone you're involved with. And you've made decisions that affect my life without my knowledge or consent. Andrew paled slightly at the mention of the trust, so he hadn't warned Megan about that particular complication. The infidelity clause was outdated, he said dismissively. My father would never enforce it. Are you certain? Olivia asked. Because I'm meeting with him this afternoon. I thought he should hear about his future grandchild directly from family. It was a calculated move, designed to put Andrew on the defensive. William Taylor was traditional in his values and had always emphasized the importance of the family name and reputation. The news of Andrew's affair, particularly with an employee, would disappoint him deeply. You're going to my father? Andrew asked incredulously. This is between us, Olivia. We can work this out privately. That opportunity passed when you decided to build a separate life with Megan, Olivia replied. Now we deal with consequences. Andrew's expression hardened. If you think my father will cut me out of the family business over this, you're mistaken. Blood comes first with him. Perhaps, Olivia conceded. But the trust isn't just about your father. It's about honoring your grandmother's wishes. And she was very clear about her views on fidelity. She checked her watch deliberately. I have a meeting with Diane Hammond in 30 minutes. You might want to prepare her for what she's about to learn about her business partner. Andrew's face flushed with anger. You would damage the firm just to get back at me? I'm not damaging anything, Andrew. Your actions did that. I'm simply bringing truth to light. Olivia gathered her purse and car keys. I'll be staying at the Four Seasons for the foreseeable future. I suggest you use this time to consider very carefully what matters to you and what you're willing to sacrifice. For your new relationship, she moved toward the door, then turned back. One more thing. When you speak to Megan, you might inform her that the apartment lease with James Turner as guarantor constitutes fraud, not the best start for your new family. With that, Olivia walked out of the house, leaving Andrew standing stunned in the kitchen. In her car, she finally allowed herself a moment of emotional release. A single, shuddering breath that carried 15 years of trust now shattered. Then she straightened. Her shoulders started the engine and drove toward the offices of Taylor and Hammond Architects. The confrontation with Andrew was just the beginning. Now she would dismantle the carefully constructed deception piece by piece, ensuring that the truth was known to everyone involved. The game had begun in earnest. The offices of Taylor and Hammond Architects occupied the 15th floor of a sleek glass tower in downtown Seattle. Olivia had visited countless times over the years, for holiday parties, client events, and the occasional lunch with Andrew. Today, she entered as neither wife nor guest, but as someone with purpose. The receptionist, not Megan, Olivia noted, smiled in recognition. "Mrs. Taylor, Andrew just called to say he's running late this morning." "I'm not here to see Andrew," Olivia replied smoothly. "I have an appointment with Diane." Confusion flickered across the young woman's face, but she nodded. "Of course. I'll let her know you're here." Minutes later, Diane Hammond emerged from her office. At 52, she was a commanding presence, tall and elegant with silver-streaked dark hair and the confident bearing of a woman who had succeeded in a male-dominated field. She had founded the firm 20 years ago and brought Andrew in as a partner when his innovative designs began attracting national attention. "Olivia," Diane greeted her, surprise evident in her tone. "This is unexpected. Is everything all right?" "We need to talk privately," Olivia said, maintaining a professional demeanor despite the turmoil beneath. Diane studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, come in." Her office was a testament to her design philosophy: clean lines, strategic use of natural materials, and walls showcasing architectural drawings of the firm's most celebrated projects. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's skyline provided a dramatic backdrop. "Coffee?" Diane offered, closing the door behind them. "No, thank you," Olivia declined, taking a seat across from Diane's desk. "This isn't a social visit." Diane settled into her chair, folding her hands on the desk. "I gathered as much. What's going on, Olivia? Are you aware that Andrew is having an affair with Megan Reynolds?" The directness of the question caught Diane off guard. For a moment, she simply stared at Olivia, her expression shifting from shock to understanding. "I suspected something inappropriate," she finally said, her voice careful. "There have been signs, preferential treatment, closed-door meetings, expenses that didn't quite add up. But I had no confirmation until now." "She's pregnant," Olivia continued, watching Diane closely. 10 weeks. Andrew is the father." Diane closed her eyes briefly, the news clearly distressing. When she opened them, her gaze was sharp with concern. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. This must be devastating for you." "It is," Olivia acknowledged, allowing a glimpse of her pain to show. "But I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because you deserve to know that your business partner has compromised the firm by hiring his mistress and giving her access to sensitive information." Diane's expression hardened. "Professional ethics matter to me. If Andrew has violated those boundaries, that's a serious issue for the partnership. My investigation suggests the relationship began almost immediately after Megan was hired," Olivia explained. "The hiring itself bypassed normal protocols. Your emails at the time questioned her qualifications, but Andrew insisted." Diane's eyebrows rose. "You've been thorough. I'm an attorney. Evidence is my specialty." Olivia removed a folder from her briefcase. "These are copies of relevant documents: Megan's employment records, her unusual salary increases, expense reports, showing hotel charges that coincide with times Andrew claimed to be at client meetings." Diane accepted the folder but didn't open it immediately. "Why are you sharing this with me, Olivia? Surely this is painful for you to discuss." "Because this isn't just about my marriage," Olivia explained. It's about professional integrity. Your firm's reputation could be at risk if clients discover that an employee was hired and promoted based on a personal relationship rather than merit. Diane nodded slowly, understanding the implications. And what do you want from me? It was the same question Andrew had asked, but from Diane, it carried different weight. A professional seeking to understand motives rather than a guilty husband trying to negotiate his way out of consequences. Transparency, Olivia replied. I want you to know exactly what's happening so you can protect your interests and the firm's. I also believe Megan should be transferred to a position where she doesn't have access to sensitive client information or Andrew's schedule. That's reasonable, Diane agreed. Though I suspect Andrew won't see it that way. Andrew's judgment is compromised where Megan is concerned, Olivia said simply. Yours doesn't have to be. Diane studied her for a long moment. You're handling this with remarkable composure, Olivia. Most people would be falling apart. I save that for private moments, Olivia admitted. Publicly, I focus on strategic action, a hint of respect shown in Diane's eyes. What are your next steps? I'm meeting with William Taylor this afternoon, Olivia said. There are family trust matters to discuss. Understanding dawned on Diane's face. Eleanor's infidelity clause. I'd forgotten about that old provision. You knew about it? Olivia asked, surprised. Eleanor was my mentor when I started in architecture, Diane explained. She believed in protecting what she built, both professionally and personally. That clause was her insurance policy against behavior she considered destructive. This revelation shifted something in Olivia's understanding. Diane wasn't just Andrew's business partner. She had connections to the Taylor family that predated even Andrew's career. Did you know Eleanor well? Olivia asked. Well enough to be certain she would expect that clause to be enforced, Diane replied. She didn't include it as a theoretical deterrent. She meant it as concrete protection. This was valuable information, confirmation from someone who knew Eleanor personally that the clause wasn't an outdated formality as Andrew had suggested. Thank you for telling me that, Olivia said sincerely. Diane leaned forward slightly. You should know that William respects you enormously, Olivia. He's told me more than once that you remind him of Eleanor. Your intelligence, your principles. The comparison to Andrew's formidable grandmother was unexpected but reassuring. If William saw parallels between Olivia and Eleanor, he might be more inclined to honor Eleanor's wishes regarding the trust, regardless of family sentiment. I appreciate the insight, Olivia said, rising from her chair. I should go. Andrew will likely arrive soon, and I'd prefer not to cross paths with him here. Diane stood as well. What you've shared will remain confidential until I've had time to consider the appropriate response from a business perspective. That's all I ask, Olivia replied. At the door, Diane placed a hand on Olivia's arm. Eleanor would admire how you're handling this, you know. She believed in facing betrayal with dignity, but never passivity. The words strengthened Olivia as she left the building, another piece of leverage secured. Diane Hammond wouldn't be a passive bystander in this unfolding drama. She would act to protect the firm she had built, which might well mean challenging Andrew's authority and decisions. Olivia's next destination was the law office of Gregory Simmons, the longtime Taylor family attorney and co-trustee of Eleanor's trust. She had called ahead, citing urgent family business, and Gregory had immediately made time to see her. His office was in a historic building near Pioneer Square, the interior a testament to old Seattle wealth with its dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books. Gregory himself, at 72, was a living connection to an earlier era of legal practice, meticulous, discreet, and governed by a strict ethical code that sometimes seemed at odds with modern corporate law. Olivia, he greeted her warmly, rising from behind his imposing desk. What brings you here with such urgency? She took the offered seat, gathering her thoughts. Gregory had known Andrew since childhood and had drafted her and Andrew's prenuptial agreement 15 years ago. His loyalty to the Taylor family was unwavering, but so was his commitment to honoring legal obligations. "I need to discuss Eleanor Taylor's trust," Olivia began, "specifically the infidelity clause." Gregory's bushy eyebrows rose slightly, but he betrayed no other reaction. "That's a provision we haven't had cause to examine in all the years I've managed the trust." "We have cause now," Olivia said quietly. Understanding dawned in Gregory's eyes. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I see. And you're here as Andrew's wife," Olivia replied. "And as an attorney seeking clarity on the legal application of trust provisions." Gregory nodded slowly. "The provision is straightforward in its intent, though application always involves interpretation. May I ask what evidence you have regarding potential violation of the clause?" "Andrew is having an affair with his administrative assistant," Olivia stated plainly. "She's pregnant with his child. I have documented evidence of their relationship, including financial support he's providing for her apartment." Gregory remained impassive, though his fingers drummed once on the desktop, his only tell when processing troubling information. "That would indeed constitute a clear violation of the clause," he acknowledged. "However, as co-trustee with William, I must follow proper procedure. Formal notification must be given to the beneficiary, evidence must be presented, and a hearing must be held before any determination is made." "I understand," Olivia said. "I'm prepared to follow the procedure precisely. What I need to know is whether William's personal relationship with Andrew might influence the objective application of the trust terms." Gregory's expression turned serious. "My obligation is to Eleanor's wishes as expressed in the trust documents. William's is the same, regardless of personal sentiment. He takes that responsibility very seriously. Andrew believes his father would never enforce the clause against him," Olivia said. "Andrew underestimates his father's commitment to principle," Gregory replied. "William may love his son, but he revered his mother and the values she stood for. He wouldn't dishonor her intentions." This was crucial information, another piece of leverage Olivia could use. If both trustees were committed to enforcing Eleanor's wishes, Andrew's position was far more precarious than he realized. "What's the next step?" Olivia asked. "You'll need to file a formal notification of violation with both trustees," Gregory explained. "Include any evidence you've gathered. We'll then schedule a hearing where Andrew can present his defense, if any. The process typically takes about 30 days to complete. And during that time, the trust disbursements continue normally," Gregory said. "However, once notification is filed, the beneficiary cannot make any extraordinary withdrawals or transfers from trust accounts without trustee approval. It's a safeguard against attempts to move assets before a ruling." Olivia nodded, making mental notes. "And if the violation is confirmed?" "Per Eleanor's terms, 50% of Andrew's allocation would transfer to you," Gregory explained. "That amounts to approximately $9 million, based on current trust valuations." The figure was substantial, though Olivia's interest wasn't primarily financial. It was about accountability, ensuring that Andrew's betrayal carried real consequences. "I'll prepare the formal notification immediately," she said. "I'd also like to meet with William before he hears about this from Andrew." "He's in town this week," Gregory informed her. "I can arrange a meeting this afternoon if you'd like." "Please do," Olivia said. "And Gregory, I need your absolute discretion on this matter until the formal process begins." "Of course," he assured her. "Client confidentiality is sacred to me, as is my duty as trustee." As Olivia left Gregory's office, she felt a growing sense of control over the situation. Andrew had assumed his father would protect him from the consequences of his actions, but both trustees appeared committed to upholding Eleanor's wishes. The leverage this provided was significant. Her next stop was a safe deposit box at Seattle First National Bank, where she and Andrew kept important documents. Using her key, Olivia accessed the box and removed copies of their prenuptial agreement, property deeds, and insurance policies. She needed to understand exactly where she stood legally before proceeding further. In her car, she received a text from Jessica. "A called Office 3X looking for you. Also, M didn't show up for work today." Interesting. Had Andrew warned Megan to stay away after this morning's confrontation? Or was something else happening? Olivia replied, "Thank you. Any messages from W. Taylor?" Jessica's response came quickly. "His assistant called. He can meet you at 3 p.m. at his club." Perfect. William Taylor was a creature of habit, conducting most of his business at the Washington Athletic Club, where he'd been a member for 40 years. Olivia confirmed the appointment, then drove to her temporary suite at the Four Seasons. The hotel had been a deliberate choice, luxurious but also practical, located downtown within walking distance of her office. She had arranged for a 2-bedroom suite, anticipating she might be staying for some time while legal proceedings unfolded. In the elegant space, Olivia unpacked the small suitcase she had prepared that morning before confronting Andrew. She had packed strategically, professional attire for meetings, casual clothes for weekends, and a few cherished personal items. Everything else could be replaced if necessary. Spreading the legal documents on the suite's dining table, Olivia began methodically reviewing the prenuptial agreement she and Andrew had signed before their wedding. At the time, it had seemed a prudent financial safeguard given their professional ambitions. Now, it would determine the division of their substantial marital assets. The terms were straightforward. Assets acquired before marriage remained separate property, while those acquired during marriage would be divided equally. The waterfront home was jointly owned, as was the vacation property in the San Juan Islands. Their retirement accounts were individual, as were their respective business interests. Notably, the agreement included a clause regarding substantial gifts or inheritances received during the marriage, specifying that these remained the separate property of the recipient. This would apply to any funds Olivia received through the Taylor Family Trust's infidelity provision. As she reviewed the documents, Olivia's phone rang. Andrew, calling for the 4th time that day. She let it go to voicemail, not yet ready for another conversation. She needed to meet with William first, to secure that alliance before engaging with Andrew again. Her phone chimed with a voicemail notification. Steeling herself, Olivia listened to Andrew's message. "Olivia, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. I'm sorry you found out this way, but involving my father and Diane is unnecessary and vindictive. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. There's a lot at stake here, for both of us." His tone was a mixture of contrition and warning, acknowledging wrongdoing while simultaneously trying to regain control of the situation. It was exactly what she had expected from him. Olivia deleted the message without responding. Andrew was right about one thing. There was indeed a lot at stake. But he still failed to understand that the dynamics had fundamentally changed. This wasn't a negotiation where he could charm or intimidate his way to a favorable outcome. This was a reckoning, and it would proceed on her terms, not his. Checking the time, Olivia gathered the documents for her meeting with William Taylor. As she prepared to leave, she received another text from Jessica. D. Hammond called. Says A. Left office abruptly after heated conversation. Also, I found something interesting in company financials. I want to meet tomorrow morning. So Diane had already confronted Andrew about Megan. Good. Another front was opening in this carefully orchestrated campaign. Olivia texted back her confirmation for the morning meeting, then headed out to meet her father-in-law. William Taylor was a formidable man who valued family legacy above all else. How he responded to news of his son's betrayal would be crucial in determining the path forward. As she walked through the hotel lobby, Olivia caught a glimpse of herself, in a mirrored wall, poised, elegant, and utterly focused. The woman reflected back at her was not a victim, but a force to be reckoned with. In less than 48 hours, she had transformed devastating personal betrayal into a strategic campaign. For accountability, Andrew had underestimated her. That was a mistake he would soon deeply regret. The Washington Athletic Club stood as a bastion of Seattle's old guard, an elegant brick building in the heart of downtown, where business relationships had been forged for generations. Olivia arrived, precisely at 3, passing through the ornate lobby with its polished marble and dark wood paneling. William Taylor occupied his usual corner table in the members' dining room, a space that managed to be both imposing and discreet. At 74, he remained a commanding presence, tall and straight-backed with a full head of silver hair and piercing blue eyes that matched Andrew's. His career as a commercial developer had made him a significant figure in Seattle's real estate landscape, though he had stepped back from daily operations in recent years. He rose as Olivia approached, his expression revealing nothing as he kissed, her cheek in greeting. "Olivia, you're looking well, despite what I suspect are difficult circumstances." So he already knew something was amiss. Olivia wasn't surprised. William's network of connections throughout Seattle's business community was extensive. "Thank you for meeting me on short notice, William," she said, taking the offered seat. He signaled for the waiter, ordering his usual scotch and water. Olivia requested sparkling water with lime, needing clarity for this crucial conversation. "Gregory mentioned you needed to discuss Eleanor's trust," William said once the waiter had departed. "I assume this is not a casual inquiry." "No," Olivia confirmed. "It concerns the infidelity clause, specifically its application to Andrew." William's expression remained neutral, but she noticed his fingers tighten slightly around his water glass, the only indication that her words had landed with impact. "I see," he said after a moment. "And you have reason to believe this clause should be invoked?" "Andrew is having an affair with his administrative assistant," Olivia stated directly. "She's pregnant with his child. I have documentation of their relationship, including financial support he's providing for her housing under a false name." William absorbed this information with remarkable composure, though a muscle tightened in his jaw. A familiar gesture Olivia had seen in Andrew when he was controlling strong emotion. "Have you spoken with him about this?" William asked. "This morning," Olivia confirmed. He acknowledged the relationship, but seemed to believe family loyalty would protect him from any real consequences, particularly regarding the trust. William took a measured sip of his drink. "Andrew has always conflated love with leniency. It's a misunderstanding of how I view family responsibility." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, though she suspected she already knew. "My mother built something substantial from nothing," William explained. "She established the trust not just to provide financial security for her descendants, but to ensure they honored the values she held dear. Fidelity in marriage was paramount among those values." He set his glass down precisely. "I loved my mother, and I love my son, but love doesn't exempt us from accountability." It was exactly what Olivia had hoped to hear, though she was careful not to reveal her satisfaction. "Andrew believes you would never enforce the clause against him. Then he underestimates my respect for my mother's wishes," William said simply. "And my understanding of the consequences." The waiter returned, asking if they would like to order food. William declined, indicating this was a business meeting rather than a social lunch. Once they were alone again, William leaned forward slightly. "What are you seeking, Olivia? Vengeance? Financial compensation?" "Accountability," she replied without hesitation. "Andrew made choices that violated not just our marriage, but his professional ethics and family obligations. I simply want those choices to carry appropriate consequences." William studied her, his gaze analytical. "You've always been precise in your thinking. It's a quality I've admired in you." Eleanor had the same quality, from what I've heard about her, Olivia observed. A slight smile touched William's lips. Yes, she would have approved of you. She had no patience for emotional dramatics, but great respect for principled action. He took another sip of his scotch. Gregory tells me you're planning to file a formal notification regarding the trust violation. Yes, Olivia confirmed. I'm preparing the documentation now. I won't recuse myself from the decision, William stated. Some might expect me to, given my relationship with Andrew, but that would be abdicating my responsibility as trustee. I understand, Olivia said, and I appreciate your commitment to impartiality. William hesitated, then asked, May I inquire about your intentions regarding your marriage? It was a personal question, but a relevant one given the circumstances. I'm evaluating my options, Olivia replied carefully. But I don't see how our relationship can continue given the extent of Andrew's deception. William nodded, seeming to have expected this answer. When my late wife Elizabeth discovered my own indiscretion early in our marriage, she made it abundantly clear that she would leave me if it ever happened again. It never did. The revelation surprised Olivia. William had never spoken of any marital difficulties before. His 40-year marriage to Elizabeth had seemed the picture of stability until her death from cancer 5 years ago. I didn't know, Olivia said quietly. Few do, William acknowledged. But I tell you this to explain why I understand the importance of consequences. That ultimatum from Elizabeth saved our marriage and taught me about integrity. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we love is to hold them accountable. His words resonated deeply with Olivia, confirming her instinct that William would be an ally rather than an obstacle. Thank you for your candor, she said. And for hearing me out. Eleanor's clause will be applied as written, William assured her. Once you file the formal notification, Gregory and I will proceed with the hearing process. Andrew will have the opportunity to present his defense, but based on what you've told me, the outcome seems clear. As they prepared to leave, William placed a hand on Olivia's arm. One more thing. Have you spoken with Diane Hammond? This morning, Olivia confirmed. William nodded. Good. Diane mentioned some concerns about the firm's financial management. Recently. Nothing specific, just irregularities that made her uncomfortable. You might want to inquire about that. It was a valuable tip, another potential avenue to explore. I'm meeting with her tomorrow, Olivia said. I'll ask her about it. Outside the club, William shook her hand formally. Whatever happens next, you have my respect, Olivia. Not everyone responds to betrayal with such clear-headed resolve. As William's driver pulled away, Olivia checked her phone and found 3 missed calls from Andrew and a text from Jessica. A came to the office looking for you. Seemed agitated. Also, D. Hammond moved tomorrow's meeting to 8 a.m. at her home. Address, not office. The change of venue was telling. If Diane wanted to meet at her home rather than the office, she likely had sensitive information to share, perhaps the irregularities William had mentioned. Rather than returning to the hotel, Olivia decided to go to her law firm. She needed to complete the formal trust violation notification and continue gathering evidence. The firm would be quieter in the late afternoon, allowing her to work without interruption. As she crossed the lobby toward the elevators, Olivia noticed a familiar figure waiting near the reception desk, Megan Reynolds, looking significantly less confident than she had in Olivia's kitchen just 2 days ago. For a moment, Olivia considered avoiding the encounter, but decided against it. Better to face this confrontation on her terms, in a professional setting where she held the advantage. Megan, Olivia said, approaching the younger woman with measured steps. This is unexpected. Megan startled, clearly not having anticipated being discovered. Mrs. Taylor, Olivia, I need to talk to you. I believe we've said everything necessary to each other, Olivia replied, her tone coolly professional. Please, Megan insisted, her voice tinged with desperation. Just 5 minutes. There are things you don't understand. Olivia glanced around the lobby, noting several colleagues watching with poorly disguised interest. "My office," she said, tersely, leading Megan to the elevators. Once inside Olivia's corner office with the door closed, Megan's composure crumbled further. She sank into a chair, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Andrew is furious," she began without preamble. "He says you've gone to his father and his business partner, that you're trying to destroy him." "I'm simply ensuring appropriate parties are informed of facts that affect them," Olivia corrected. "Andrew's characterization is dramatic but inaccurate." Megan looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "He told me about the trust thing. He said you're trying to take millions from him out of spite." "The trust provision was established by his grandmother, not me," Olivia pointed out. "Andrew violated its terms, knowingly. Consequences aren't spite, Megan. They're the natural result of choices." "He says you've always been cold," Megan continued, a hint of her earlier defiance returning. "That your marriage has been dead for years, that you were together in name only." The barb was designed to wound, but Olivia refused to engage with. The emotional manipulation. "Is there a point to this conversation, Megan? Because reciting Andrew's excuses for his behavior isn't a productive use of either of our time." Megan's shoulders slumped. "He wants me to get rid of the baby." This was unexpected. Olivia studied the younger woman carefully, noting the genuine distress in her expression. "When did he suggest this?" Olivia asked, her tone neutral. "After you left this morning," Megan said, wiping her eyes. "He called me in a panic, saying everything was falling apart. He said we needed to eliminate complications until things blow over." "And what do you want?" Olivia asked. The question seemed to surprise Megan. "What?" "It's your body, your pregnancy," Olivia clarified. "What do you want?" Megan stared at her, clearly not having expected this line of questioning. I want to keep the baby. Andrew promised we'd be a family. He said he'd leave you, that we'd get a place on the lake. And now that his promises are proving more complicated to fulfill, he's suggesting alternatives," Olivia observed. "That must be difficult to reconcile with the future he painted for you." Megan nodded miserably. "I don't know what to do. I can't afford the apartment without him, and now Diane's put me on administrative leave from the firm. Everything's falling apart." Olivia felt a complicated mix of emotions: anger at Andrew's callousness, disdain for Megan's naivety, yet also a reluctant sympathy for the younger woman's predicament. She was, after all, pregnant, and suddenly facing abandonment by the man who had promised her security. "Why come to me?" Olivia asked. "I'm hardly the person most likely to sympathize with your situation." "Because you're the one with the power. Now," Megan said simply. "Andrew's terrified of you. Whatever you're doing, it's working." It was a remarkably astute observation, revealing a clarity of perception Olivia hadn't expected from Megan. "I can't help you with Andrew," Olivia said finally. "He's made his choices, and so have you. Now you both need to deal with the consequences." "That's it?" Megan asked, fresh tears welling. "You won't even try to call off whatever you're doing?" "No," Olivia confirmed. "But I will give you some advice if you want it." Megan looked up expectantly. "Document everything," Olivia told her. "Every promise Andrew made, every financial contribution, every text about the pregnancy. If he's truly abandoning, you'll need evidence to establish paternity and secure child support." It wasn't the sympathy Megan had come seeking, but it was practical guidance that would serve her better in the long run. "He said you'd be vindictive," Megan said softly. "But you're not, are you? You're just methodical." "I believe in fairness," Olivia replied. "What happens to Andrew now is the result of his actions, not my vindictiveness. Remember that when he tries to blame me for the collapse of his promises to you." Megan rose, gathering her composure. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you didn't have to," No, I didn't, Olivia agreed. But contrary to what Andrew may have told you, I'm not heartless, just clear-eyed about reality. After Megan left, Olivia remained at her desk, processing the unexpected encounter. Andrew's suggestion that Megan terminate the pregnancy revealed a new depth to his selfishness, willing to create life and make promises, then abandon both when they became inconvenient. It strengthened her resolve to see this through to its conclusion. The consequences now unfolding weren't just about her own betrayal. They were about a pattern of behavior that hurt everyone in Andrew's orbit. Turning to her computer, Olivia began drafting the formal notification of trust violation. She detailed the evidence methodically: dates, locations, financial records, and witness statements. She included photographs of the real estate brochure with Megan's note, documentation of the Capitol Hill apartment leased under the false name, and records of hotel charges that coincided with Andrew's business trips. By 7 o'clock, the high document was complete, 15 pages of irrefutable evidence that Andrew had violated the infidelity clause of Eleanor's trust. Olivia printed 2 copies, one for Gregory Simmons and one for William Taylor, and placed them in separate envelopes. She was preparing to leave. Her phone rang. Samantha Reed, her friend the thoracic surgeon, calling after her shift. "Jessica called me," Samantha said without preamble. "She's worried about you. Want to tell me what's going on?" Olivia hesitated. She hadn't confided in anyone about Andrew's betrayal, focusing instead on strategic action rather than emotional. "Processing. Andrew's having an affair with his secretary," she said finally. "She's pregnant." "Jesus, Liv," Samantha breathed. "When did you find out?" "2 days ago. She came to our house to tell me herself." "That's bold," Samantha said, clearly taken aback. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "I'm at the office," Olivia replied. "And I'm handling it." "Of course you are," Samantha said, a note of affectionate exasperation in her voice. "But even lawyers need friends during a crisis. Where are you staying? Not at the house with him, I hope." "The Four Seasons, Suite 1502. "I'm coming over when I finish here," Samantha declared. "With wine, non-negotiable." Despite herself, Olivia smiled. "Fine. But I'm meeting Diane Hammond at 8 tomorrow morning, so don't expect a late night." "Understood. See you in an hour." After ending the call, Olivia gathered her things and headed for the elevators. As she waited, Robert Mitchell emerged from his office, surprise registering on his face when he saw her. "Olivia, working late?" "Just finishing some pressing matters," she replied. "Thank you for the information on architectural partnerships. By the way, it was helpful." Robert nodded, his expression turning serious. "I heard Andrew was looking for you earlier. Seemed upset. Everything okay?" "Not particularly," Olivia admitted. "But it will be. Professional situations sometimes become complicated when personal relationships fail." Understanding dawned in Robert's eyes. "If you need anything, legal consultation, professional support, or just someone to run interference, let me know." "I appreciate that," Olivia said sincerely. As she drove to the hotel, Olivia reflected on the unexpected allies emerging in this difficult time. Diane Hammond with her connection to Eleanor Taylor, William with his commitment to accountability, and now colleagues offering support. Even Megan's visit, while challenging, had provided valuable insight into Andrew's response to the unfolding situation. In her hotel suite, Olivia changed into comfortable clothes and opened her laptop to check emails. There was a message from Gregory Simmons confirming receipt of her trust violation notification and outlining the next steps. The formal hearing would be scheduled within 2 weeks, with Andrew receiving official notice tomorrow. Another email arrived from Diane Hammond with the subject line, "For your eyes only." Opening it, Olivia found a brief message. "Discovered financial discrepancies in firm accounts. Andrew has been diverting client payments through shell companies, bringing documentation tomorrow. This goes beyond personal matters into potential Fraud. Olivia stared at the screen, the implications sinking in. If Andrew had been embezzling from the firm, the consequences would extend far beyond their marriage and the family trust. His professional reputation, his architecture license, even his freedom could be at risk. A knock at the door announced Samantha's arrival, bearing the promised wine and takeout from Olivia's favorite Thai restaurant. As they settled on the suite sofa, Samantha studied her friend with concern. "You look exhausted but strangely energized at the same time," she observed, pouring generous glasses of Cabernet. "What aren't you telling me?" Olivia took a sip of wine, then shared Diane's revelation about potential financial fraud. Samantha whistled low. "This is turning into more than just an affair, isn't it?" she said. "It seems that way," Olivia agreed. "Each layer we peel back reveals something worse beneath." "Are you prepared for how ugly this might get?" Samantha asked. "Andrew won't go down without a fight, especially if he's facing professional and legal consequences beyond the marriage." "I'm prepared," Olivia said with quiet certainty. "The truth matters, Samantha. What happens now isn't just about me or my feelings. It's about accountability for actions that have harmed many people." Samantha raised her glass in a toast. "To accountability, then, and to friends who stand by you while you enforce it." As they ate dinner and talked, Olivia felt some of the tension of the past days beginning to ease. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The meeting with Diane, Andrew's inevitable response to the trust notification, and whatever revelations the financial documents might contain. But tonight, she allowed herself this small respite. Good food, good wine, and the company of someone who asked nothing of her except honesty. It was, she realized, the first genuine moment of peace she had experienced since Megan Reynolds had appeared at her door 3 days ago, with news that changed everything. Dawn broke over Elliott Bay, painting Seattle's skyline in soft pinks and golds as Olivia prepared for her early meeting with Diane Hammond. After Samantha had left the previous night, Olivia had slept surprisingly well, the kind of rest that comes from clarity of purpose rather than peace of mind. She dressed with care in a charcoal pantsuit and emerald silk blouse, the color a subtle reminder of her engagement ring and the promises it once represented. As she fastened pearl earrings, a gift from her mother upon passing the bar exam, Olivia's phone chimed with a text from Andrew. "I've been served with trust violation papers. This is going too far. We need to talk today. This doesn't have to become a legal war." Olivia didn't respond. Andrew's message revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of their situation. This had become a legal matter the moment he chose to violate both their marriage vows and his grandmother's trust provisions. His desire to talk now was simply an attempt to regain control of a narrative that had slipped from his grasp. Diane Hammond lived in a modernist glass and cedar home perched on a hillside in Magnolia, with sweeping views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. The house was a testament to her architectural vision, clean lines harmonizing with the natural landscape, innovative yet timeless. Olivia arrived precisely at 8, noting that Diane had apparently arranged for them to meet alone. No staff were visible as Diane welcomed her into a light-filled kitchen where coffee was already brewing. "I thought we'd be more comfortable here than at the office," Diane explained, pouring 2 cups. "Especially given what I need to show you." She gestured to a thick folder on the kitchen island. "I was up half the night going through these records. What I found disturbed me enough that I've already consulted with my personal attorney." Olivia accepted the offered coffee. "You mentioned financial discrepancies in your email." "Discrepancies is too mild a term," Diane said grimly. "Andrew has been systematically diverting funds from client accounts for at least 18 months. He created a shell company called Cascade Design Consultants that's been billing our clients for supplementary services they never requested or received." She opened the folder, revealing meticulously organized financial records. It started small, an extra 5,000 here, 10,000 there. But it escalated. In the past 6 months alone, Nearly $800,000 has been funneled through this fake consultancy. Olivia studied the documents, her attorney's mind quickly processing the implications. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal fraud. Exactly, Diane confirmed. I discovered it while reviewing the Hunter Museum project finances. The client questioned some charges, and when I looked deeper, I found this pattern across multiple accounts. She pushed another document forward. A bank statement for Cascade Design Consultants showing regular transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The company is registered to a James Turner, Diane continued. The same name you mentioned was on Megan's apartment lease. His false identity, Olivia murmured, the pieces connecting. He's been building a separate financial life under this name. It appears so, Diane agreed. But here's what concerns me most. Some of these diverted funds were earmarked for critical structural elements of our projects. If Andrew cut corners on materials or engineering to increase his take, the implication hung heavily between them. Architectural firms didn't just design aesthetically pleasing buildings, they were responsible for structures that needed to be fundamentally sound and safe. Has there been any evidence of structural compromise? Olivia asked, her concern immediate. I've ordered confidential reviews of all Andrew's recent projects, Diane said. But it will take time to determine if there are safety issues. In the meantime, I need to decide how to proceed with both the firm and the authorities. Olivia considered the situation carefully. Have you confronted Andrew about these findings? Not yet, Diane replied. After our conversation yesterday, I chose to investigate quietly first, but the partners need to be informed, and I have ethical obligations to our clients and licensing board. May I make a suggestion? Olivia asked. At Diane's nod, she continued. Document everything meticulously before confronting Andrew. Once he knows you've discovered the fraud, he'll likely attempt to destroy evidence and cover his tracks. That's exactly what my attorney advised, Diane agreed. I'm meeting with the other partners this afternoon, without Andrew, to disclose what I've found. The firm will likely place him on immediate administrative leave while we conduct a formal investigation. She hesitated, then added, I wanted to warn you first. When this happens, Andrew will be cornered professionally as well as personally. That may make him more desperate and unpredictable. I appreciate the warning, Olivia said sincerely. This explains some things that have been troubling me about our finances. What do you mean? Diane asked. Andrew's personal spending has increased significantly in the past year. Expensive gifts for Megan, weekend trips, the apartment he's paying for. Yet our joint accounts haven't shown any unusual withdrawals. Olivia frowned. I assumed he was using his separate personal accounts, but these records suggest another source. The shell company, Diane confirmed. From what I can tell, he's been living a double life financially as well as personally. Olivia took a contemplative sip of her coffee. May I keep copies of these records? They may be relevant to other proceedings. Of course, Diane said, sliding a USB drive across the counter. Everything's here, including the offshore account details. My IT specialist was able to access quite a bit before covering our tracks. As Olivia pocketed the drive, Diane's expression turned serious. There's something else you should know. Megan wasn't just Andrew's administrative assistant. Over the past year, he's given her increasing access to sensitive financial information. Her computer login was used to create several of the fraudulent invoices. This was unexpected. You think she was knowingly involved in the fraud? I'm not certain, Diane admitted. It's possible Andrew used her login without her knowledge. But some of the transactions occurred when Andrew was verifiably elsewhere, according to his calendar. Has she accessed any account since being placed on leave? Olivia asked. That's what concerns me, Diane replied. There was an attempted remote login to our financial system using her credentials last night, after business hours. It was flagged by our security protocols. So Megan might be more deeply involved than she had appeared during yesterday's tearful conversation in Olivia's office. The younger woman's visit now took on a potentially more calculated dimension. Perhaps she had been testing Olivia's knowledge of the financial improprieties while presenting herself as an abandoned victim. This complicates things, Olivia observed. If Megan is actively involved in financial fraud, her pregnancy and relationship with Andrew take on different implications. She could be facing criminal charges alongside him, Diane agreed, which might explain why she came to see you yesterday. Testing the waters, seeing how much you know. Olivia nodded slowly. She mentioned being desperate about money, that she couldn't afford the apartment without Andrew. If she's been receiving proceeds from this scheme and those payments are now in jeopardy, she has more to lose than just Andrew's emotional support, Diane finished the thought. My attorney has advised me to report this to the authorities within 48 hours. I wanted you to be prepared for that timeline. I understand, Olivia said. And I appreciate your transparency. This goes well beyond marital infidelity now. As she left Diane's home 30 minutes later, Olivia's mind was processing these new revelations. Andrew hadn't just betrayed her with an affair. He had potentially committed financial crimes that could result in criminal charges. And Megan might not be merely the naive other woman, but possibly a knowing accomplice. Driving toward downtown, Olivia called Gregory Simmons from her car's hands-free system. Gregory, it's Olivia Taylor. Something significant has developed that may impact the trust proceedings. I'm listening, the elderly attorney replied. Andrew appears to have been involved in financial fraud at his firm. Diane Hammond has discovered evidence of embezzlement through a shell company, the same entity that's been paying for his mistress's apartment. Criminal charges may be forthcoming. There was a moment of silence on the line. This is certainly relevant to the trust proceedings, Gregory finally said. Eleanor included a separate clause regarding criminal activity by beneficiaries. Section 12.4 stipulates that any beneficiary convicted of a felony forfeits their entire trust allocation, not just the 50% specified in the infidelity clause. This was new information to Olivia. I don't recall seeing that provision in my review. It's in the supplementary conditions, Gregory explained. A separate document Eleanor added after a distant cousin became involved in securities fraud. She was adamant that her legacy would not support criminal behavior. So, if Andrew is convicted of financial crimes, Olivia began, he would lose his entire trust allocation, Gregory confirmed, approximately $18 million. The funds would be redistributed among the remaining family beneficiaries according to the proportional formula in Section 14. Olivia absorbed this information as she navigated through morning traffic. How does this affect our current proceedings regarding the infidelity clause? It doesn't, for now, Gregory said. We continue as planned with the hearing on the infidelity violation. Criminal proceedings would likely take considerably longer to resolve. But I'll inform William of this development immediately. After ending the call, Olivia redirected her route toward her law firm. She needed to consult with colleagues who specialized in financial crimes to understand the full implications of what Diane had discovered. At Preston, Mitchell & Taylor, she found Jessica already at her desk despite the early hour. You have 3 urgent messages, Jessica reported, following Olivia into her office. Andrew called twice, and Samantha wants you to call her regarding unexpected developments. Also, this arrived by courier an hour ago. She handed Olivia a thick manila envelope. Thank you, Olivia said, recognizing Andrew's handwriting on the envelope. Could you ask Robert Mitchell if he's available for a consultation this morning? And see if Linda Patel is in today. I need her expertise on financial fraud cases. Once alone, Olivia opened the envelope from Andrew. Inside was a formal letter, typed on his personal stationery. Olivia, since you've refused to speak with me directly, I'm forced to communicate through this letter. The actions you've taken in the past 3 days are disproportionate to the situation and potentially damaging to both of us. While I acknowledge my relationship with Megan was wrong, involving my father, my business partner, and the family trust, is an excessive response clearly designed to punish rather than resolve. I'm prepared to offer the following settlement. The waterfront house remains yours. Full financial support for 2 years while you transition. A lump sum payment of $2 million from my personal assets. An amicable, private divorce with a mutual non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, I ask that you withdraw the trust violation claim and refrain from further discussions with Diane or my father about personal matters. This offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I will be forced to defend myself more aggressively, including examining certain aspects of your own professional conduct that might not withstand scrutiny. I hope you'll consider this reasonable proposal and respond accordingly. Andrew Olivia read the letter twice, noting the thinly veiled threat in the final paragraph. It was a desperate maneuver, Andrew attempting to regain control through a combination of financial incentives and implied intimidation. What aspects of her professional conduct did he imagine wouldn't withstand scrutiny? Olivia had maintained impeccable ethical standards throughout her career. The threat was almost certainly a bluff, a last-ditch attempt to derail her methodical approach to accountability. She placed the letter in her desk drawer just as Jessica announced that Robert Mitchell was available to meet now, and Linda Patel would join them in 15 minutes. Robert's expression was grave when Olivia explained the situation, sharing the financial documents Diane had provided. "This is serious," he said, examining the records. "Based on what you've shown me, Andrew could be facing charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and possibly even mail fraud if these invoices went through the postal system." "What kind of penalties are we looking at?" Olivia asked. "Substantial," Robert replied. Federal sentencing guidelines for financial fraud of this magnitude typically result in 5-10 years imprisonment, plus restitution and fines. And that's before considering potential state charges or civil liability from defrauded clients. Linda Patel, the firm's white-collar crime specialist, offered similar assessments when she joined them. "The evidence is compelling," she observed after reviewing the documents. "The systematic nature of the fraud, the creation of a shell company, and the offshore accounts all demonstrate clear intent. This wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment. It was a calculated criminal enterprise." "What about Megan Reynolds's potential involvement?" Olivia asked. Linda considered the question. If she knowingly participated, she could be charged as a co-conspirator. However, prosecutors might offer her a deal in exchange for testimony against Andrew, especially if her role was subordinate and she's expecting a child. "And if Andrew attempts to claim I had knowledge of these activities as his spouse?" Olivia asked, thinking of his veiled threat. Both attorneys shook their heads. "Without evidence of your direct participation or benefit, spousal knowledge isn't enough for criminal liability," Linda assured her. "And given that the funds were diverted to accounts and properties you weren't associated with, it would be a difficult claim to substantiate." After the meeting, Olivia called Samantha to inquire about the unexpected developments her friend had mentioned. "I was at the hospital this morning for early rounds," Samantha explained. "And guess who was admitted to the ER at 2 a.m.? Megan Reynolds." "What happened?" Olivia asked, immediately alert. "Anxiety attacks with severe chest pain," Samantha said. She was worried it was a cardiac event or pregnancy complication, but all tests came back normal. She was discharged a few hours ago. "Did she mention what triggered the anxiety?" "Apparently an argument with Andrew," Samantha reported. "One of the nurses overheard her on the phone saying something about them finding out about the money and being thrown under the bus. I wouldn't normally share patient information, but given what you told me last night, it's relevant," Olivia confirmed. "Thank you for letting me know." The call confirmed Olivia's growing suspicion that Megan was more deeply involved in Andrew's schemes than she had initially appeared. The timing of her hospital visit, just hours after the attempted login to the firm's financial system, suggested a connection. Olivia checked her watch, noting it was approaching noon. Diane would be meeting with the partners soon, officially beginning the professional consequences phase of Andrew's unraveling. Meanwhile, Gregory would be informing William about the potential criminal aspects of the situation. Her phone rang. Andrew again. This time, Olivia decided to answer. There was no benefit in avoiding direct communication now that all the key pieces were in motion. Yes, she answered, her tone neutral. Did you get my letter? Andrew demanded, his voice tight with controlled anger. I did. And? These are generous terms, Olivia. Far more than you'd get in standard divorce proceedings. They're irrelevant, she replied calmly. This isn't a negotiation, Andrew. It's a consequence. Damn it, Olivia, he exploded. You're destroying everything we've built. Is that what you want? To burn it all down because I made a mistake? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument, Olivia countered. What you've done is systematic deception, both personal and professional, and now it appears to include financial crimes. There was a moment of silence on the line. What are you talking about? Andrew finally asked, his tone suddenly wary. Diane has discovered Cascade Design Consultants, Olivia said simply. She's meeting with the partners as we speak. The sharp intake of breath told her everything. He hadn't expected this particular house of cards to collapse so quickly. There are explanations for those transactions, Andrew stammered. Business arrangements that Diane doesn't fully understand. Save it for your defense attorney, Olivia advised. You're going to need one. You're behind this, aren't you? Andrew accused, desperation entering his voice. You've turned Diane against me, just like my father. No one needed to be turned against you, Olivia replied evenly. Your actions accomplished that on their own. I simply ensured the right people had the relevant information. This isn't over, Andrew warned. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Actually, I do, Olivia countered. I've spent the morning consulting with colleagues who specialize in financial crimes. The evidence Diane has gathered is substantial, Andrew. This goes far beyond our marriage or even the trust violation. There was another long pause. We need to talk face to face, Andrew finally said, his tone shifting to something almost pleading. Please, Olivia. 15 years together deserves at least that much. She considered the request. There might be value in meeting with Andrew, not for reconciliation, but to gauge his state of mind and potential next moves. But it would need to be on her terms, in a setting where she maintained control. Fine, she agreed. Tonight at 7, Kao, in the lobby of the Four Seasons. It's a public space where we can speak privately. Thank you, Andrew said with obvious relief in his voice. I'll be there. After ending the call, Olivia sat quietly at her desk, processing the morning's developments. The situation had evolved, far beyond what she had anticipated when Megan first appeared at her door just 4 days ago. What had begun as personal betrayal now encompassed potential criminal conspiracy, with professional and legal ramifications that would reshape many lives. As she prepared for her afternoon appointments, Olivia reflected on Andrew's accusation that she was destroying everything. The truth was more complex. She had simply pulled one critical thread, and an entire fabrication of lies had begun to unravel under its own weight. 1 year later, Olivia Taylor stood at the window of her downtown office, gazing out at Seattle's skyline bathed in late afternoon sunlight. The view was different now, from the 35th floor of a gleaming high-rise where Preston, Mitchell, Taylor, and Reed had recently relocated following a significant expansion. The addition of Samantha Reed as partner, specializing in medical malpractice law, had broadened the firm's scope and brought in valuable new clients. So much had changed in 12 months. Sometimes it seemed impossible that only a year had passed, since Megan Reynolds had appeared at her kitchen door with news that unraveled her life. Other times, it felt like a lifetime ago. Olivia's contemplation was interrupted by a knock at her office door. Jessica entered, now promoted to paralegal, while she completed evening law school classes. "The final trust disbursement documents are ready for your signature," Jessica announced, placing a folder on Olivia's desk. "And Mr. Simmons called to confirm all requirements have been met." "Thank you," Olivia replied, moving from the window to her desk. "Any word from the prosecutor's office?" "Yes, just came through," Jessica reported, checking her tablet. "Andrew's sentencing has been scheduled for next Friday. The prosecution is recommending 8 years based on the plea agreement." Olivia nodded, accepting the information with composed neutrality. The criminal case against Andrew had proceeded more swiftly than anyone anticipated, largely due to the overwhelming evidence and Andrew's eventual decision to accept a plea deal rather than face trial. The night of their scheduled meeting at the Four Seasons a year ago had marked the beginning of the end for Andrew Taylor's carefully constructed facade. Olivia had arrived in the elegant lobby at precisely 7, choosing a discreet seating area with clear sightlines to all entrances. Security cameras monitored the space, a precaution she had deemed necessary given Andrew's increasingly erratic behavior. But Andrew never appeared. Instead, Olivia had received an urgent call from Diane Hammond. "Andrew's gone," Diane had reported, her voice tense. "He emptied his office, withdrew $50,000 from his personal account, and his passport is missing from his desk. The firm's IT department discovered he deleted substantial files before departing." Within hours, the FBI had been notified, and by morning, a multi-agency investigation was underway. The evidence Diane had gathered, combined with Olivia's documentation, painted a damning picture. Systematic financial fraud spanning years, with client funds diverted to offshore accounts under the alias James Turner. 3 days later, Andrew had been apprehended at Vancouver International Airport, attempting to board a flight to Hong Kong with a hastily acquired false passport. The man who had once commanded respect in Seattle's architectural community was brought back in handcuffs, his desperate flight only strengthening the case against him. What followed was the systematic dismantling of Andrew's criminal enterprise. Federal agents traced over $3.2 million to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Liechtenstein. Properties purchased under the James Turner alias were discovered in 3 countries. And, perhaps most damaging, investigators found evidence that Andrew had compromised structural elements in 2 major projects to increase profits, necessitating expensive retrofits to ensure safety. Megan Reynolds had faced her own reckoning during this period. Initially positioning herself as an unwitting victim, her story collapsed when forensic accountants traced $420,000 to her personal accounts. Funds transferred directly from the shell company Andrew had established, faced with potential charges. As a co-conspirator, Megan had eventually agreed to testify against Andrew in exchange for a reduced sentence. She had given birth to a daughter 4 months ago while under house arrest, the child immediately placed with Megan's parents as she began serving an 18-month sentence for money laundering and conspiracy. The scandal had rocked Seattle's business community, with media coverage extending well beyond local outlets. For weeks, Olivia had navigated a gauntlet of reporters and avoided social events where she might become the center of unwanted attention. Throughout it all, she had maintained her professional composure, focusing on her legal practice and the careful restructuring of her personal life. The waterfront home had been sold, the proceeds divided according to the divorce agreement that had been finalized 6 months ago. Olivia had purchased a smaller but elegant condominium in a historic building downtown, its classic architecture and serene interior reflecting her preference for timeless design over trendy extravagance. The Taylor family trust matter had been resolved as Gregory Simmons predicted. Once Andrew's criminal activities came to light, the felony clause in Eleanor's trust was invoked, resulting in the forfeiture of his entire allocation. According to the trust's redistribution formula, substantial portions went to other family members, with Olivia receiving the share stipulated under the infidelity provision, approximately $9 million. "Will you attend the sentencing?" Jessica asked, bringing Olivia back to the present moment. "No," Olivia replied. I've provided my victim impact statement to the court. My presence isn't necessary. In truth, Olivia had no desire to see Andrew in the defendant's box, diminished and defeated. The last time she had seen him was during divorce proceedings, where he had appeared haggard and sullen, a shadow of the confident architect she had married. That image was enough. She didn't need to witness his final humiliation. One more thing, Jessica added. Diane Hammond called. The renovations at the women's shelter are complete, and they're planning a small ceremony to thank the donors. She wondered if you'd like to attend. Olivia smiled slightly. Please tell her I'd be honored. The shelter renovation had been a joint project between Olivia and Diane, a constructive channel for the energy that might otherwise have been consumed by bitterness. Using a portion of her trust disbursement, Olivia had funded the complete renovation of a facility for women leaving abusive relationships. Diane had donated her architectural services, creating bright, welcoming spaces that provided both security and dignity for residents. Their collaboration had evolved into a friendship that surprised them both. Two strong women whose connection had been forged in the aftermath of betrayal. Diane had rebuilt Taylor and Hammond Architects under her sole leadership, renaming it Hammond Design Group and establishing new ethical standards that had restored client confidence. Your mother called while you were in court? Jessica continued, checking her notes. She's arriving tomorrow for her visit and wanted to confirm dinner at 7. Olivia nodded, making a mental note to ensure her mother's favorite flowers were arranged in the guest room. Carol Bennett had been a stabilizing presence throughout the past year, offering quiet support without judgment. A retired judge, she understood both the legal complexities and the emotional toll of such public proceedings. As Jessica departed, Olivia returned to the window, her reflection faint against the backdrop of the city she had called home for 2 decades. At 43, she looked much the same as she had a year ago, though perhaps there was a new definition in her expression, a clarity that came from having faced profound betrayal and emerged stronger. The trust documents awaited her signature, the final legal action in a year filled with court appearances, depositions, and settlements. Once executed, these papers would close the financial chapter of her connection to the Taylor family. William had maintained cordial contact, his respect for her handling of the situation evident in their occasional lunches. He had apologized for his son's actions, though Olivia had assured him no apology was necessary. Parents weren't responsible for the moral failings of adult children. Sitting at her desk, Olivia reviewed the documents carefully before signing. As she did, she reflected on the unlikely gifts that had emerged from the devastation of her marriage. There was a clarity now about what mattered to her, what she valued, and who she could trust. The facade of perfection had been stripped away, revealing something more authentic beneath. Her phone chimed with a text from Samantha. Court ran late. Still on for dinner and wine at 8? Olivia smiled as she replied affirmatively. Their weekly dinner had become a cherished ritual, sometimes joined by other friends, sometimes just the two of them discussing cases, sharing insights, or simply enjoying the comfortable silence of true friendship. 6 months ago, Samantha had proposed joining Olivia's firm as a partner, bringing her medical malpractice expertise to complement the corporate focus. The addition had been transformative, expanding their client base and bringing fresh energy to the practice. As evening approached, Olivia gathered her things, including the signed trust documents for delivery to Gregory Simmons in the morning. In the elevator descending to the lobby, she found herself standing next to Robert Mitchell, now the firm's managing partner. Headed home? He asked with a warm smile. Dinner with Samantha first, Olivia replied. We're trying that new place on First Avenue. Ah, I hear the chef is remarkable. My wife and I have reservations next week. He hesitated, then added, The Collins merger documents came through today. Outstanding work, Olivia. The client specifically mentioned your thorough approach as key to their confidence in the deal. Thank you, she said, accepting the compliment with quiet pride. The Collins merger had been her first major corporate acquisition case since the upheaval in her personal life, and she had approached it with renewed dedication to her professional craft. In the lobby, Robert paused before they parted ways. You know, when everything happened last year, many of us worried about how it might affect you, professionally and personally. I just want to say how impressed we've all been with your resilience. The comment caught Olivia off guard. She wasn't accustomed to such direct acknowledgement of what she had endured and overcome. Life rarely follows the path we expect, she replied after a moment. The challenge is to find solid footing on the new one. Outside, Seattle's early evening bustle surrounded her, professionals heading home, tourists exploring the downtown area, students gathered at cafes. Olivia walked the 6 blocks to her condominium, enjoying the familiar rhythm of the city. Her new home occupied the entire top floor of a beautifully restored 1920s building. Its warm wood floors, high ceilings, and abundant natural light created an atmosphere of serene elegance. Unlike the waterfront house she had shared with Andrew, which had always felt partially like a showcase for his success, this space reflected her own aesthetics and priorities. Entering, she was greeted by soft classical music playing through the integrated sound system, a setting programmed to activate when she arrived home. She had time for a quick change before meeting Samantha, switching her court suit for slim black trousers and a sapphire blue cashmere sweater. As she refreshed her makeup, Olivia caught her own gaze in the mirror and held it for a moment. There had been dark days during the past year, moments of doubt, anger, and grief for the life she had thought was hers. But those moments had grown less frequent and less intense with time. What remained was a profound appreciation for truth, however, difficult, over-comforting illusion. Andrew's betrayal had forced her to rebuild her life on a foundation of reality, rather than appearance, a painful process that had ultimately led to greater authenticity in all her relationships. Her phone chimed with a notification from a news app. Architect Andrew Taylor to face sentencing next week for multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The article included a recent photograph of Andrew being escorted into the courthouse, his expression a mixture of defeat and defiance. Olivia closed the app without reading further. The details of Andrew's crimes and their impact on his career, reputation, and freedom were no longer central to her life. She had provided her statement to the court, explaining how his deception had affected her, but she had consciously chosen not to allow his downfall to become the defining narrative of her own story. In fact, she reflected as she gathered her purse and keys. The past year had been paradoxically transformative in positive ways. Her professional focus had sharpened. Her friendship with Samantha had deepened into a business partnership that energized them both. Her relationship with her mother had evolved from occasional visits to meaningful connection. And the Women's Shelter Project with Diane had provided a sense of purpose beyond her legal career. Even her perspective on personal relationships had shifted. Last month, she had accepted a dinner invitation from James Harrington, a corporate ethics professor she had met while speaking at a legal symposium. Their conversation had been engaging, their connection genuine. Whether it developed into something more remained to be seen, but Olivia approached the possibility with neither cynicism nor naivete, simply openness to authentic connection. Leaving her condominium, Olivia headed toward the restaurant where Samantha would be waiting. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt water from the nearby sound. Seattle's skyline glittered against the darkening sky, the familiar landscape viewed from a new vantage point, much like her life itself. As she walked, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. When Megan Reynolds had arrived at her door that September morning with devastating news, Olivia had felt her world collapsing. Now, with perspective, she recognized that moment as the beginning of a different kind of life, one built on her own terms, shaped by her own values, and navigated with hard-won wisdom. The betrayal that had threatened to define her had instead revealed her strength. The deception that had undermined her marriage had ultimately led to greater authenticity in all aspects of her life. And the painful ending of one chapter had enabled the beginning of another, one written entirely in her own voice. Approaching the restaurant, Olivia spotted Samantha waiting near the entrance, her friend's face lighting up with a welcoming smile. In that moment, a simple truth crystallized. The most devastating chapter of her life had somehow led to this new beginning, unexpected, unplanned, but ultimately more aligned with her true self than the carefully constructed life she had lost. It wasn't the story she would have chosen. But as Olivia returned Samantha's smile and stepped forward to embrace her friend, she acknowledged that perhaps it was the story she had needed, one that had stripped away pretense and revealed what mattered most: authenticity, integrity, and the courage to begin again. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.